distinction is to get, Virginia's saying that it helps if you just use the scroll, the up and down arrow to get to the end of it, changing the slides rather than the mouse. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So just get to the end of the presentation and close it out or minimize. Yeah. I don't think I've ever did this. I'll try and sit so I hope it doesn't see you. You go to Fan's, right? Yeah. No, it's not to me.
Bring a cup.
What's the earliest service time? There's a 9 o'clock mass. And
Kate, I don't have backup recorders either.
9:11, and there's a
Backup recorders. Backup recorders.
Your buddies out there.
Friends, man.
No.
Mine.
No.
305, 3 to 10.
You're good, Mayor.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's the City of Palm Coast City Council business meeting. It is Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. It is 9 a.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Clufus is absent. Councilmember Branquinho.
Here.
Councilmember Cuff.
Here.
Councilmember Howell.
Here.
Mayor Holland.
Here. Thank you. Now open up to public participation. Any member of the public wish to make public comment, you have up to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Okay.
I bring up an article in the Daytona News Journal. Senate Bill 1128 and House Bill 1011 is up for being looked at, and they aim to remove local oversight of short-term rentals and make it easier for mega developers to come in and put giant houses in neighborhoods. And this is all about preemption. I'd like to know if maybe Mr. Reichman can answer if we have any solution to that if these two pass, and if we have any resolutions that we can work to try and mitigate some of these, so that I have no problem with my neighborhood, but I have vacant lots, and I would want to see an eight-bedroom house come up and 20 cars being parked out there, and those windows, and I don't think anybody else would be. My other question is, it's being stated that just over 20% of the bills has something to do with preemption. Our legislatures up in Tallahassee seem, nobody ever always has a mantra, let the federal government leave us alone, we know how to take care of ourselves. But when it comes to Tallahassee, talking to the counties and the cities and the towns in Florida, they seem to know best, and they don't believe in home rule. So it seems like they want to complain about the federal government, but they do exactly the same thing that they complain about. And I'd like to know how we talk to our state legislators, senator and representative. I know we have to have a good working relationship with them. I know that's very important. But do we ever give them any pushback, and do we watch how we vote on these bills for preemption? And I would ask that the city, on our monthly note that they give out, maybe show us how our state legislatures are voting on laws for preemption. Not everybody will be able to look up on the internet and how they voted. Not everybody has the newspaper to see how they voted. And I wonder if the city would be able to inform us, so that if they aren't really doing our bidding, maybe when November comes around, an election, we can look for a different path. And I'd like to know if the city has any thoughts on that. You know, is there any criteria that, gee, our legislators are only voting our way 20% of the time, 60% of the time, whatever it is, and then give us what their determination is, what they think how that should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Phyllis Robin Sheffield. Listening last Tuesday at the council workshop, it was exhilarating to learn from several hours of PowerPoint presentation by the several department heads that all departments are functioning maximally and amazingly. There were no issues to be considered for improvement. This is great. Kudos to all the department supervisors who keep everything in smooth sailing, not knowing much about the myriad departments, except for the permitting department overseen at the top by Chief Development Officer Jason DiLorenzo. That department I know quite a bit about because I have been immersed in evaluating the permit application. I was surprised that Mr. DiLorenzo never mentioned any need to possibly revising the application process so as to protect the homeowner against devious contractors who state gross falsehoods on the application, where he states a draw value to be a mere $2,200 rather than $23,500 that he received. Obviously, something is rotten in Palm Coast. The mayor made a comment that Mr. DiLorenzo was able to deal with real-life situations when she mentioned the difficulty that someone had in trying to erect just a shed in the backyard. But my case does not merit the intervention of Mr. DiLorenzo. As a former educator, I can attest to the fact that nothing is really outside the realm of improvement. If we were always content with the status quo, we would have a stagnant operation. Following the workshop and the onset of a council business meeting, the issue that was bothersome to the mayor immensely was the proliferation of dollar stores. The council voted to place a moratorium on future building. These stores bring revenue into the coffers of the city, whereas deceptive contractors rob the city of receiving the full permit application fees. And yet this issue apparently does not matter to our elected officials.
Next speaker.
Steve Carter, Pontos, I want to praise the sheriff
I'm sorry. Stop the clock. I just want to make sure there's no distractions happening when speakers are up, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to praise the sheriff department because they've been out and keeping the streets quite right, pretty safe. I would like to try to understand why Palm Coast doesn't have a traffic common division within the traffic. Because I would much rather see the sheriff department out fighting crime than handing out speeding tickets and all in residential areas. And many cities in Florida makes the decision that these projects are not having an adverse effect on the existing residential? Just like, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And I'll close public comment. Bill, if you could just briefly explain the short-term rental issue. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point of, you know, I'm not going to recommend that we put how our legislators vote, as there's a lot of things that they do, and it's complex through the legislative process. Committees change, bills change, right up until the very end. Things are added. But, you know, our legislators create policy, they vote on policy. However, they also secure funding for projects for us. There's a lot that they do throughout the year. So, but if you would please mention.
Yeah, let me couple things, Mayor. You know, when we hear a lot of recently, and for the last several years actually, on state versus local with the regulation of short-term rentals, and one of the things I think it's important for the community to understand is that while we do not per se facially, the City of Palm Coast does not facially per se regulate short-term rentals, what we do have the power to do, and we continue to do, we've been doing, is regulate if there's any negative consequences associated with any inappropriate use of a residence. For example, if there are parking issues, and those may be resulting from short-term rentals or just, you know, long-term rentals or owner-occupied premises. If there's rental problems, we have a very significant amount of codes in Chapter 44 regarding rental issue, about parking issues. We have noise ordinances if there's an issue that there's inappropriate use of, again, any residence, whether it's a short-term rental or a long-term rental or whether it's owner-occupied. If that becomes an annoyance and a disturbance to the community and to the neighbors, then we have codes on. We don't call them, this is a short-term rental noise. We have it across the board. Similarly, we have regulations regarding garbage and nuisances. And again, I'm giving examples of what may become, doesn't always, but could become a problem associated with short-term rentals, the consequences. But I think it's important to understand that, yes, there are already regulations that are on the books about prohibiting local governments from getting in the business of specifically per se regulating short-term rentals. And the important thing is to recognize for this council, as well as all local governments, is that there's another separate state law that says that if you try to get into the business of regulating something that has already been dealt with statewide by the state of Florida legislature, and we try to overcome that by regulating, then there can be an award of attorney's fees against as a penalty for any local government. So we have to be very cautious. We have to be very cautious if we try to get into the area that the state has made a policy decision that this is something that they wish to regulate, so there's uniformity in the regulations throughout the state of Florida. And that is what is stated as the basis by the state legislature over and over again as why they feel there are certain areas in the state of Florida that need to be regulated uniformly, as opposed to, as they call it, a patchwork of different local regulations. And people can agree and disagree, you know, whether or not that's an appropriate policy. But I will tell you again, just to summarize, the City of Palm Coast Code Enforcement does its very best to make sure that it responds to any neighborhood concerns with regard to the impacts on the neighbors in the neighborhood dealing with any type of inappropriate use of a residence, whether it be a short-term rental, if you use that term, or whatever use. And that is something that the Code Enforcement Board works very hard, not the board, Code Enforcement staff, works very hard to try to make sure they respond to those types of complaints.
Thank you. And Matt, when will the Florida Park Drive residents be notified of the January 2019?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Notices went out last week in the mail. We used a 300-foot mailing radius off Florida Park Drive. We also did the geofence, and that is in process, and door hangers are being hung today by the crew. So we've noticed 3 ways. We'll continue to push out this week. The plan, the times, meeting format, all that information.
Thank you. Okay. We'll now move to agenda item number E1, the approval of the minutes of the City Council for January 7, 2020 business meeting, January 14, 2020 workshop, January 14, 2020 special meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number F2 is an ordinance.
Well, the title of this ordinance is as follows: An ordinance of the City Council, City of Palm Coast, order providing for the Fourth Amendment to the Development Agreement for the Palm Coast Park Master Plan Development, or MPD. It's allowing residential high use on tracks 15, 17, and 20. It's allowing residential medium use on track 22, allowing commercial on track 17, and limiting industrial use to tracks along US 1, providing for legislative findings intent, for conflicts, for severability, and providing for an effective date. Mayor, Council, this is the second read of a quasi-judicial matter, so if there have been any ex-parte communications since the first reading of this, those should be disclosed at this time.
Council, any ex parte communications?
No, not for mine.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
We have staff here to present. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, City Council. This is the second reading to the Palm Coast Park Master Plan Development Agreement. Jose's going to provide a short presentation. Staff was approached by a citizen regarding cultural resources, and I thought it'd be relevant that we provide a little bit of history and background on the investigations that were conducted as part of the Palm Coast Park DRI. Just a few slides for Jose. Also, in addition, what is new from the first reading is that staff corrected a Scrivener error that was in Table 4. That has been corrected, and just to note that all the advertisement that was completed in staff report was correct, but Jose will touch a little bit on that as well.
Good morning, Mayor and members of City Council. Jose Papa for the Community Development Department. Again, this is the second reading of the Palm Coast Park DRI MPD Development Agreement Amendment. And again, Palm Coast Park is a 4,700-acre development of regional impact approved in 2004. And again, this amendment was approved on first reading at your January 7, 2020 City Council. And just to summarize the proposed amendment, again, the request is to provide for residential medium density use on track 22, residential high use density use on tracks 15, 17, 20. Another amendment would be permit commercial on track 17, along with a note to limit industrial uses to tracks along US 1. As Mr. Tyner highlighted, there was some concern about having, as you can see up in the northernmost portion of the DRI, there were some historical and archaeological resources that were aimed to be protected as part of the DRI development order. And just to give you some background on that, again, starting with the ITT Development Comprehensive Land Use Plan, which essentially identified Hewitt's Mill and House as circled in the number 15 there. That would be the northwest portion of the existing current boundaries of this Palm Coast Park DRI. So there it is identified. And then during the Palm Coast Park DRI review process, which was a 2-year process that involved a number of state agencies, including the Division of Historical Resources and Review, you've identified in that yellow area that was recommended for preservation by the Division of Historical Resources. Excuse me. So that was recommended for conservation or preservation through a 100-foot buffer area. And so what was done as part of the DRI is that essentially that area that you see highlighted in the red dashes the ownership was transferred to the Flagler, to the Florida Agricultural Museum. And that's approximately 60 acres, and that preservation is both for historic and environmental purposes. So that cultural resource that was identified as part of that DRI review was preserved as part of that. On top of the dedication of that land, there is a condition within the DRI development order that within a quarter mile of any development within that historic site would require further research or investigation. And then moving further along, as part of our land development code, we have a section that talks about fortuitous finds and unmarked human burials. That is, as a developer starts to go through the development process, if they were to discover any evidence of bones or archaeological resources, they are to inform the State Historic Preservation Board and as well as the city to inform us and to stop any development actions until that resource can be investigated. So there is protection for our archaeological and cultural resources within this DRI. We've done the investigations, but covered within the DRI-DO and also our land development code, we have those protections. So at this time, staff, as well as the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board, is recommending the approval of this amendment to the Palm Coast Park MPD Development Agreement. And I believe the applicant.
What the applicant is coming up, I just want to note too that the Florida the Agricultural Museum, the historian there, Mr. Fisk, we'll continue to have conversations with him regarding, potential cultural resources in that area.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Mr. Schimento sends his apologies for not being able to be here on behalf of the applicant this morning. We had the same presentation we had last time. I don't know that it's necessary for us to repeat it unless council so desires. I am here for questions, and the applicant is here for questions, should the council have any.
Council, any questions at this time? I'll open it to the public. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number F2, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment, take it back to this council. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number G3 is a resolution approving the facilities plan for the expansion of wastewater treatment plant 2.
Thank you, Mayor. We have staff, Steve Flanagan, and our consultants here to present.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, and all. Steve Flanagan for the City Utility Department today. We have with us Mr. David Gierock to my left with CPH Engineers. He's the president of the company. And to my right, we have Jeffrey Wilson, manager with PRMG, now Raftellus. Thank you. We would like to present items 3, 4, and 5 this morning, all of which pertain to one of the 6 main City Council goals. That goal is expansion. And for these items specifically, in regards to infrastructure expansion. We are here to present these items to the council for consideration. The items are 1, the wastewater facility plan, 2, the capital finance plan, and 3, the design contract for engineering services to expand wastewater treatment plant number 2 from 2 million gallons a day to a 4 million gallon a day wastewater facility. That all said, I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Gierock to walk you through it.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. CPH has been working with the city since the city purchased the utility from Florida Water back in 2003. So we're very familiar with the city's overall wastewater treatment facilities and capacity. Currently, the city has 2 wastewater treatment facilities, wastewater treatment plant number 1, which has a capacity of 6.83 million gallons per day, and wastewater treatment facility number 2, which currently has a capacity of 2 million gallons per day. This chart's a little busy, but basically what this chart is showing us is the capacity of the wastewater treatment facilities and the flows that those wastewater treatment facilities are receiving. FDEP regulates the wastewater treatment facilities, and the primary thing they look at is the red line shown there, which is the 3-month average daily flow to the wastewater treatment facilities. The city, on a regular basis, every month, they submit operating reports to FDEP and to show compliance with their permit. And also, they do a capacity analysis report on an annual basis that basically evaluates flows versus capacity. Also shown on this chart is on the purple line, the bottom line, shows the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant number 2 at 2 million gallons per day. And then the green line is showing the capacity of wastewater treatment plant number 1, which is 6.83. The blue line shows the combined capacity of the 2 wastewater treatment facilities. And as can be seen, in mid-2023, it is anticipated the capacity, the 3-month average daily flow, will exceed the capacity of the combined wastewater treatment facilities, which dictates the need for this expansion. As I stated, FDEP has permits that they issue to the wastewater treatment facilities and requires certain compliance as part of those permit conditions. One is that if permit capacity will be equal or exceeded within the next 4 years, that the design of the proposed improvements to increase capacity must be underway. The city has undertaken this in the summer. They actually submitted a request for inclusion to be able to obtain funding under the state revolving loan program, which is a low interest program to provide funding for wastewater treatment facilities. And they proceeded with development of facilities plan to identify the necessary improvements for expansion to meet the anticipated capacity. The next item is related to submitting of permit applications and completing of the design. So that's basically where the city is at this point, is to proceed with the design process and then submitting of the permit applications over the next year so that the construction of the improvements can proceed. Of course, the city's strategic action plan also requires that facility capacity be upgraded as necessary to provide treatment for the wastewater flows as the city grows. The facility plan defines basically the necessary improvements to expand the capacity of wastewater treatment facility number 2 from the 2 million gallons per day capacity up to the 4 million gallons per day capacity. So it'll require influent structure upgrades, new MBR treatment trains, chlorine contact chamber expansion, biosolids management, and then some lift station improvements. In addition to that, the capacity of the reclaim system and effluent disposal through wetlands will need to be increased based on the increased capacity. All of these improvements are defined within the facilities plan that we're requesting the approval by resolution, which was required for FDEP funding under the SRF program. This shows the schedule and some of the critical tasks, and we've got a bar chart following this that outlines the proposed schedule. Critical to this schedule is completing the construction by the end of 2022 to ensure that we have capacity online by the summer of 2023 when the treatment capacity is anticipated to be exceeded at the combined wastewater treatment facilities. The city has already, as I stated, submitted the request for inclusion for the SRF design loan. Those are low-interest loans provided from the state to fund wastewater treatment facilities and water treatment facilities. The proposed interest rate on that loan is 0.117%, so very, very low interest rates that the city is able to obtain for these loans. The loan would be for the design improvements, and it is anticipated that the hearing on February 12th at SRF, your project is up for approval. The resolution adopting the facilities plan and capital finance plan will be submitted to them and will make you eligible to receive the funding at that February hearing. Following approval of those funds, the design will begin for the project, and over the next year, design and permitting would proceed with the goal of being able to obtain SRF funding, again, lowest interest funding for the construction of the improvements in February a year from now. So basically, today, we're asking for approval of the capital finance plan and the facilities plan so that we can obtain that SRF design loan, complete over the next year, design permitting for the project, with construction to begin in spring of next year. About an 18-month construction period, so that the construction would then be completed by 2022. Just to fill you in a little bit on the SRF loan process. So the state revolving loan process, you submit the request for inclusion, that's already been completed for the design loan. Then you go through and you develop the plan, which is basically up for approval today, the facilities plan. This process applies to both the design loan and also for the construction loan. Then you proceed with developing the planning documents that define the proposed improvements, the schedule and costs, and obtain the necessary permits through all the different regulatory agencies that regulate the wastewater treatment facilities. And then once you complete all of that, then you can obtain funding through DEP for the proposed improvements. A loan agreement will be developed following the approval of the funding, and we will be back in front of the council for approval of that loan agreement, once that's approved by FDEP. Overall, wastewater treatment facilities, all the improvements are defined within the facilities plan. The estimated cost is outlined within there. The overall program cost, including all soft costs, design costs, and construction of the facilities, is approximately $20 million. So we're requesting today for approval of the resolutions for that capital finance plan and the facilities plan. Jeff is going to be going through the capital finance plan, which basically shows the city's ability to be able to repay the loan.
Good morning. Yes, Jeff Wilson from Raftalis. We're here to discuss the capital finance plan portion of the SRF loan. We can skip over that. So as David mentioned, one of the requirements of the SRF loan is to develop a capital finance plan. Fortunately, approximately a year ago, we did a rate study for the city, which anticipated the construction of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, so that assisted us with this capital finance plan. But we have updated those projections for fiscal years 2020 through 2024 to ensure that the city meets its covenant requirements and meets its SRF loan obligations. Like I said, the last study was approximately 1 year ago, and the city adopted two 6% rate adjustments for fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 2020, and those have already been implemented by the city. Then the rest of our forecast identified just annual indexings for 2021 through 2023. Some of the benefits are, since the last update, is we've had increased customer growth, favorable interest rates. As David mentioned, this SRF loan has an incredibly low interest rate. And one thing the benefit of the SRF loan does is it matches the cost recovery with the capacity expansion and the debt service to the future customers when they come online, so they start paying their pro rata fair share of the facilities. Then the immediate risk that we have is construction costs keep increasing. There's competition for labor and bids, and as David mentioned, wastewater treatment capacity really can no longer be deferred. And as David also mentioned, the total cost of the project with construction is $20 million, but why we're here today is just the design portion, and that's approximately $1.4 million. That includes a loan service fee to the FDEP of 2% and capitalized interest costs during construction. Some of the details on the loan. Again, it's a $1.4 million loan. The annual debt service is approximately $72,000 a year. Incredibly low interest rate of less than 1%, it's 0.117. It does require, through the state, annual coverage of that debt service of 1.15 times revenues. Some of the updates from our forecast projections. Customer growth is strong. We're projecting approximately 1.4% per year, or that's approximately 700 accounts. Operating expenses are expected to continue to rise at about 3.5% per year, but the majority of your operating expenses are personnel, power, chemicals, sludge. It makes up about 70% of the cost. And we also set aside projections for continued strong capital funding from rates. We have an R&R deposit of 10% per year. That's $4.7 million annually, and we hope to increase that over time. We've projected that out in the future periods to try to get up to 15% of revenues. Some of the highlights, it's projected the system to maintain strong debt service coverage, 1.5 times revenues, and maintain over 90 days of working capital, which just promotes a strong credit rating. We currently have an A+ rating by S&P and Fitch, which recently got updated this fall to a positive outlook for the city. And again, the final results with the rate increases are we're not projecting any additional rate increases for the city above annual indexings. We are projecting annual indexings, but no additional rate adjustments. And to give you a picture of where you stand, your rates currently are slightly above the average of the communities out there. The average is about $67 per month. You're approximately $72 per month, but you're firmly right in the middle of the pack of the other utilities. And we hope that over time, because of lower projected future increases, that these other utilities will be moving up the board and allow you to remain competitive. Then just a conclusion, the SRF loan currently has a very low cost of issuance compared to revenue bonds. Revenue bonds it's a lot more complicated process, and the interest rate can be approximately 3.75%, sometimes up over 4%. So this rate is extremely low, and it allows you to defer payment until project completion. Also, the existing rates, along with rate indexing adjustments, are projected to be adequate to meet this financial plan, and we're not requesting the adoption of any additional rate adjustments. And the city has the financial capability to repay the 2021 SRF design loan and maintain overall credit worthiness of the system. And we can take any questions that you have.
Council, at this time, do you have any questions or comments?
One quick question. Are these interest rates locked in once we sign the paperwork? Can they be moved?
For the design loan, it would be locked in at that 0.117% for the 20-year period.
And those $72,000 is the interest we're paying every year, isn't it?
That's interest and principal payments.
Every year.
Per 20-year period. For repayment of that's just repayment for the design loan. We'll come back in a year, and we'll come back, and once we get the construction loan, we'll come back for approval of that. This is for the design loan only, and so that's the repayment, principal and interest for that loan.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number G3, please do so at this time.
Good morning, Council. John Brady, Palm Coast. As I understand it, we're going to be making a loan for the design phase at this point, and sometime down the road, we're going to have the major loan to do what is designed. What guarantee is there that that loan will be at a low interest rate? What guarantee is it that we'll be eligible for a loan? I just don't like the idea of starting down a road with no assurance. The other questions I have is, who signs the loan? What title does that person have on the loan? Because we often say the city has no debt. And every loan that I have seen has been signed by the mayor of Palm Coast. So I want to know who signs the loan, and I want to know about the guarantee that we might have with regard to the financing of the project. Thank you.
Next speaker. None, I'll close public comment. You could respond, please.
David, you're probably best to respond to those questions.
So, you know, he is correct. There is no absolute guarantee that, that we'll be able to obtain the construction loan. I've been in this business now for 30 years. I've financed probably $500 million with the state on different, you know, facilities, and the funding has always, you know, been available to us. In the event that we were unable to obtain SRF funding, which is, you know, I think is you know, very, very unlikely that would occur, then you would go to the bond market. In the past, the city has, you know, gone to the bond market to be able to obtain funding. We use the SRF loan program because, as Jeff mentioned, extremely low closing costs associated with the loan, much, much better interest rates. And you know, our experience, you know, especially, you know, the state has been, you know, very interested in water quality issues, and, you know, we certainly anticipate that they will continue, you know, funding this type of program that improves wastewater treatment capacity and treatment levels within the state.
Can you give me one good reason why we wouldn't be able to get that loan? One good reason only.
No. Basically, I see no possible reason. Certainly, you know, the only issue would be is, you know, do they adequately fund the program? You know, the federal government, you know, typically funds the program. The state continues to fund the program. The state, actually, it's a revolving loan program. So the revolving loan process, basically, as you know, as all these different you know, cities and counties fund wastewater treatment facilities, they repay these loans. So as those loans are all repaid, the state takes that money and then they reloan that money. You know, so you know, the whole idea is it's a revolving program that continuously has a funding source.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, no further questions or comments at this time. I'll entertain a motion.
Make the motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. I know agenda number 4 and 5 are related. We had this presentation in the workshop. I'm assuming no further presentation is needed.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Council, any questions or comments on agenda item number 4? Open up to, I'm going to open up to the public for 4 right now. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number 4, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment, take it back to this council, entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number 5 is a resolution approving a work order with CPH for engineering design services for the expansion of wastewater treatment plant 2. Council, any questions or comments on this particular agenda item? Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number 5, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment, take it back to this council, entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number H, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are consent agenda items. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on any of those items, please do so at this time. I'll close public comment. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number I is public participation. If you've already taken an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, these are for individuals at the end of the meeting that wish to speak. Please state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Morning, Council. Dennis McDonald. I came today because I wanted, it's appropriate I speak at this point about consent agenda, okay? Because we just had 4 things approved on the consent agenda. I didn't hear any discussion. As a matter of fact, I find these things on the agenda listed online, but I don't find any backup for them, and I'm sure that probably none of you can explain to me what a fuel polishing system is, but you just bought one. So with that in mind, I want to dial back to a few months ago where we had a situation where we had $1.5 million moved from the general fund of the city, okay, to a non-departmental fund. $1.5 million, that's a lot of money in my mind. Certainly, I'm sure it is with you too. So I have written to the council members and asked you, why this get approved on a consent agenda? I mean, it's a whole lot of money. There's no explanation. You know, I don't find any backup online this morning for the 4 items that were listed on the consent agenda. I'm sure I could have called Virginia and she could have gotten it to me, but it's not online. So consequently, nobody knows what this $1.5 million is, but I believe I know what it's for. Okay, it's probably the $1.5 million that has been discussed as some type of payment, you know, regarding the Mednex situation that we're talking about in this county. Now, if I can quickly take you back to the legislative session, I was there and I watched everybody in this county, the county commissioners, all of them got up and they said, yes, let's go with Mednex. So I ran it back to Dave Sullivan, the chairman, to tell me, you know, just send me the emails that he had for the information that gave him the ability to say, yes, we want the Mednex. Guess what Dave Sullivan said? Nothing. He had Jerry Cameron call me. Okay, Jerry Cameron researched it for 10 days. He couldn't find anything tangible. Okay, I have a real concern here for the council and for the city. We're approving things on a consent agenda, $1.5 million, that doesn't go into a departmental fund. If it went into a department, you know, some department in the city, then we'd pretty much have a better idea where it was going. Okay, we got $1.5 million out floating, and nobody wants to admit what it's for and where it's going. Okay, we've got a county chairman of the commission who gets everybody to sign up, okay, and say, yeah, we, legislator, senator, Representative Renner, we want Mednex. Nobody's got any tangible information on this. That I can't find any type of measurement for this, and these measurement processes do exist, okay, and there's nothing at all to be found. This is one of the greatest hoax I've ever seen in my life. This is probably even bigger than what went on when we bought the old hospital sheriff's headquarters. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Michael Martin. I'm a citizen of Palm Coast. And I'd like to speak to the city about its seemingly totally unpreparedness for the very real issue of contamination of soil on golf courses that may or may not be developed. As far as I can determine, the Planning Commission has no interest in this. Jason DiLorenzo's response to when we asked him about the contamination was, really, arsenic on golf courses? This is a well-known fact that golf courses use industrial amounts of chemicals to maintain the golf course's beauty and appeal, far greater than any individual landowner would ever use. There have been cases of contamination on golf courses so great that the developers have given the golf course back to the local government because it could never be developed profitably. D.R. Horton gave back a golf course they purchased near Naples for this. Other governments have put in moratoriums to develop a well-thought-out, well-developed plan for dealing with this, including Collier County and the city of Bonita Springs. This is a critical issue for many of us citizens because it's our health and safety that's at stake here. If you look at the city charter in section 2, paragraph 2, it states one of the primary reasons for creating this city council and the city itself was to protect the well-being, safety, and health of its citizens. It seems to me totally unconscionable that this city council will consider a rezoning issue of a golf course without having a detailed, specific, well-thought-out plan to protect the health of the citizens in the very real possibility that there is contamination from the golf course. I ask you to come up with a plan to not consider any rezoning of any golf course or any other property that may be possibly contaminated, and I ask you to present the citizens with a well-documented, well-detailed, well-thought-out plan to deal with this before this issue becomes a public health hazard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. We will now move to discussion by City Council of matters not on the agenda. Councilmember Cuff.
Only in the Vice Mayor's absence, I will commend the staff and the other participants, community sponsors for the hackathon this weekend. It's not my cup of tea, but I was here for quite a while, and it was a very impressive event, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds based on what we've done this year, whether it is something we want to continue in the future, and what the other partners that helped us put it on thought the outcome was. But on the whole, I was very impressed, so, yeah.
Is that all?
That's all I have for this meeting.
Councilmember Branquinho.
I'll make Councilman Bob Cuff's words my words, but then again, as usually, I yield to those that know about more than me. So I'm going to yield to you your comments on the hackathon, because it's your cup of tea, as you said.
Councilmember Howell.
I too hold in the highest accolade all of the staff and volunteers on the hackathon. There was a lot of work that Don and his subordinates did to make this thing a success. I hate to see great things like that bring prominence to the city not get exposed on the TV stations. And that kind of goes back to what I had talked to in the past. You know, we're isolated from the Orlando market. And this is something that I've talked to our city manager about, and I talked to Mike, that we're going to go down and talk to the station managers, because this was so unique. It should have been on the air so everybody could see it. Unfortunately, that word just didn't get out. I know the print media did a good job, or will be doing a good job, but that's part of my frustration with promoting Palm Coast. We've got to get these people in Orlando on our team. The other item I just have to ask, and it's a question of ignorance on my behalf. Last week I said that, you know, I'm not totally knowledgeable how these things move forward, but the vaping ordinance draft is ready for us to have at a workshop. Okay. So I guess what I need is the council consent to get it on the agenda for the workshop, so that we can have that and to discuss it.
And I was not here when you presented this item, so I'm not, I mean, was there consensus? Was there a consensus on the council?
Yep.
I'm not sure.
Not that I'm aware of, excuse me.
Councilmember Howell brought it up. There was not discussion of moving it forward. I think that's what, as I understand,
Right,
Councilmember Howell, he's wishing to do that now so that the city manager and I can receive explicit direction on whether or not this moves forward.
Council, is there a direction the council wishes to take to place this item on a workshop agenda for discussion?
Absolutely.
Good.
I have no objection to it being on the workshop and see what.
Your consensus.
Thank you. Great.
Yes.
We can finally hopefully wrap our arms around this plague. And then, you know, to Dennis's question there, I know what that fuel polisher does. I didn't know it until the workshop. And had you been at the workshop, everything that was addressed on there, that's where you're going to find your backup, because it's all printed there. But, you know, the fuel polisher, that name is kind of misleading, but it purifies the fuel that has been contaminated and sitting around, and it's a needed item. But trust me, it was on the agenda at our workshop with the backup documents. And due diligence, you would have found out that magic word.
And my comments in regards to the hackathon, it was a very well-received event. I know a lot of the participants that came in from outside our community had stated unequivocally that it was one of the best hackathons they've ever attended. They do travel, the hackers around the country, and follow these events. So all in all, well-received by the participants, a great moment for our high school students that participated, and one team was selected, an actual high school student here in our community. So it was very impressive. It's impressive to see the young people that not only have participated, but then were able to present their ideas, as well as the healthcare individuals that attended really felt the applications would provide some real live solutions to the healthcare industry overall to make the patient experience a much more, I don't want to say enjoyable one, because no patient experience probably is enjoyable. However, there's a certain level of frustration. So the idea of that healthcare question and theme really had to do with improvements within the healthcare industry nationally. So those ideas are now going to be brought to those different healthcare providers around the country, and we look forward to hopefully continuing to make it a better experience each year. So thank you. Discussion by City Attorney of matters not on the agenda.
Nothing further, Mayor.
Discussion by City Manager of matters not on the agenda.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Council, again, just real briefly, Florida Park Drive meeting next week. We did confirm 329 residents were directly mailed. Those same 329 will get door hangers today in case they're tenants or have changes of address. We don't want people to be missed, and that geofencing went live. So, Mr. Carr, I'd love to chat with you after and make sure that if you didn't get it, why? Because we did mail, and I want to make sure that you got the letter. And then just real briefly, this is our second week of deploying our field service lightning in utilities, and I hope to have a phenomenal report next week. It blew our expectations away for week one as far as efficiency, as far as the excitement generated around the crew, on how it's automating their day, keeping them more accountable, helping them be more efficient. And as we start to build some statistics and some data around that, be really excited to share that with you folks on the success we're having. So it's a great thing, and it's really starting to automate and pay those rewards that I know the council hoped it would with, again, efficiency and accountability in our work division. So thank you for that.
Okay. We are adjourned.